Hi, I'm Boomerang. Who is Ross Scott?
Can you defeat me in combat? Excellent questions. I'll answer all that I can.
Ross Scott is the creator of Freeman's Mind, Silver Protection, The Game Dungeon, and other videos. Eagle-eyed viewers might notice that Ross Scott is actually mentioned at the end of every episode of Crash, as Ross's work was a massive inspiration for me making the show. I've been a huge fan of Ross since... oh my gosh, it's been that long. He is one of the most consistent, quality creators on this entire platform, and I got a chance to actually talk to him. He agreed to come onto the channel and talk about his recent campaign, StopKillingGames.com. We got to talking for a long time, and turns out Ross and I are actually from the same hometown, so we kind of talked a lot about that, and I had to cut it out for privacy reasons, obviously. So if the following interview kind of feels a little cut up occasionally, that's probably why. Also, if you're watching this and you think I'm a little bit awkward, that's because I am. Ross is kind of a childhood hero of mine, and I've actually never done an interview before, so... without further ado, let's get to the interview. Hey Ross, thank you so much for coming on. I hope you're doing well.
Been busy. Yes, thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. For those who don't know, Ross is leading a campaign called Stop Killing Games, where the focus is to end the horrific practice of making games completely unplayable. If you want to know more about this campaign and how you can help, you can go to StopKillingGames.com or check out his channel here on YouTube, Accursed Farms, for more info. So, how are you doing, Ross? I'm sure you've been really busy with all this.
Yeah, that kind of sums up everything.
How are you feeling about the campaign so far?
Optimistic, but I'm sort of acting on a mentality that any of it could collapse, so I just trying to push every angle until it's more or less completed.
Yeah, no, I can see that. You just kind of have to keep going until you can't, right? So, I mean, this was a question I was curious about. What was the first game that you kind of ran into that was killed that kind of had the impact on you? Can you remember what that was? Like a game that you're like, oh, this is a game I enjoy, and then it got killed?
Well, it's not. It actually started even before that, because just understanding that it was always online, the company could turn it off, and then that would be it. That bothered me from well before the first game that it affected me personally. So, well, the first one that I played that had shut down that bothered me was Battleford, but I think that was in 2013. But I mean, I sort of remember this earlier than then, but the first one I remember thinking like, yeah, this kind of bothers me. I think was EverQuest, which I still haven't played, but just know, and that's still going, ironically. But I would hear stories about it, see screenshots. I was thinking, geez, this seems pretty amazing to just, have it be so precarious of it being able to run,
Yeah, absolutely. You've made game dungeons for games that you knew would be dead in the past. Do you ever find it hard to get into games that require a connection to a central server? Like it's just harder, it's a barrier?
Yeah, well, it's really mixed feelings, because if I'm liking the game otherwise, I know there's some undetermined death sentence on it. So yeah, that kind of messes with my head. It's different than hard to get into, because if I really like the concept, I want to play the game. But if I know it's going to be killed, that I can't turn that off in my head is the problem.
Yeah, it kind of creeps in the back of your mind, and it makes it harder to enjoy things. Especially, yeah. I mean, I play a lot of Halo, obviously, and the new Halo game came out, and I like it. Infinite has a lot of problems, but they've worked through it. But there's certain functions on the game that were non-online required before that are now, and it seems so ridiculous to me, because it's like, why would you spend all this time making new custom maps, buying or unlocking armor, if in 8 years this game's going to be shut down possibly? I don't know if it'll be 8 years. It might not be, but that can really kill any incentive to keep playing.
I can say if it's going to be 8 years, if we have any success at all, it should protect it.
Yeah, that's the hope, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the timetable is, but 8 years, yeah, this is settled by then one way or another.
Yeah, we'll know for sure if games being killed is something we can avoid, or if it's just kind of set in stone, which it doesn't sound like it is. It sounds like there's some avenues we can go through before that we can have to call it.
Oh yeah, that's kind of my actual goal with the campaign, is to just get closure on this one way or another. So if I know it's hopeless, then my mind can go to other areas to some extent.
Absolutely.
But otherwise, we might actually change gaming history on this, because
Yeah.
again, the analogy I've been making is, and for your audience that may not be on board, still confused what we're doing. Again, for online-only games that shut down, and you can never play them again, the legality of that has largely not been tested in several major countries around the world. And I've been spending months researching and getting help on this to try and find ways that we can challenge the legality of that through like different consumer agencies. In some countries, it involves like direct government petitions, but it's mostly the consumer agencies that were kind of hitting back on that. And we're doing this primarily on the game The Crew, but it's just, while I do like that game, that's just a coincidence. I would have done it for any in this position, in that Ubisoft, the company that published it, is in France, and they have a lot more laws on consumer rights stuff than many other countries. So it's our best shot to try to get this practice challenged, because if we have any success in any major company, then companies have to have end-of-life plans for their games in order to sell there, or else they'll face a penalty. And once they do that, they may as well roll it out worldwide, because they've already done the work. And I was kind of comparing this historically to something like in Australia, I think in 2014, they sued Valve for not allowing refunds on Steam. And Australia won, and Valve rolled that out as global policy now, because you used to not be able to get refunds on games on Steam, but now the whole world can. So it's a similar dynamic, where all you need is one victory in a major country, and that could end this, or end 99% of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And speaking of keeping everybody up to date, I know that when the original Stop Killing Games video dropped, there were a few things still up in the air. Are there any new updates that you'd like to share to get out there to make sure people know?
Oh yeah, shoot, I should have made notes. The big one I think happened literally yesterday was one of our government petitions in the UK opened up. That's the one thing that we kind of screwed up on this. We had petitions. These are government petitions, in case you're confused. These aren't like change.org things. So this is something where the government has to respond and make some sort of ruling on it one way or the other if you get enough signatures. Our plans were to have them for the UK, Canada, and Australia. They've all been delayed, even though we did them weeks in advance of me having the video out. Well, the one for the UK just opened. So if we get 10,000 signatures, which I'm pretty sure we will, we're going to get a response from government. And if we get 100,000, then it'll be considered for debate in Parliament. So either way, the UK is going to have to own this issue if we get enough signatures.
Yeah.
But other news, we may have somebody's reached out to me, we may have a similar petition going in Portugal, which the threshold's much lower there. So yeah, push it everywhere we can. Another update is I've secured help from a law firm in Australia, where the short version is we're not going to be funding a lawsuit there, because we want to be able to afford that, but we'll be able to have a really good chance of their consumer protection agency, the same one that sued Valve and won, of getting their attention on this. Like, I'd say I would put the odds very high they're going to make some sort of ruling on this one way or another over time.
Gotcha.
Because of the legal sort of signal boosting that we're doing there. I may have some inroads in European Union Parliament politics, so that's still up in the air, but it's looking more promising, at least. Oh yeah, who was it? I think Patrick Breyer. He's a member of EU Parliament. Gave a positive response to this on Twitter and says he's going to investigate it, because he's saying that, just from a consumer rights perspective, that they shouldn't be able to just take back what they sold to you. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if you. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, I was told recently that there was, I don't know, I haven't like checked on this, but I heard that Ford was selling a truck that you have to pay for some sort of yearly like subscription in order to continue using, like DRM for the computer systems within the truck. And I don't know if that's true, but I've heard a few people say that at this point. So I feel like, honestly, like, although we're very purposefully trying to keep this campaign to be focused on video games, I feel like there's a larger issue of consumer rights that this touches on. And it's really interesting because I don't think big companies really stand to lose all that much by protect and not killing games, you know? It's not like they have a massive incentive to not kill a game. It's just they don't do it, and there's probably a few small incentives, so it's not like they should be fighting this super hard, you know?
Yeah, well, a few things on that. I guess on the cars, you could be completely right. I haven't even kept up with what they're doing. I remember, I think it was BMW had something where like the heated seats were on a subscription. I think I had heard more stuff like that was creeping in the cars. I know it's the case with farm equipment. I think especially from John Deere that the right to repair movement has been fighting on. Yeah, unfortunately, games and software, even though when they're separate from a physical product, I mean, other than like a disc or something, the law treats it very differently. So even though it's almost the exact same issue with the law, it's totally different. Yeah, that is one thing. Everything I'm doing, the odds in the United States are extremely bad. Like, I'm just kind of doing that as sort of like, if you find a lotto ticket on the ground, that may as well scratch it off, see if anything's on it, but that's about the odds I'm giving it. But I'm putting almost all my energy internationally on it because that's where the openings are.
Yeah.
For and for the incentive, what you said is my view entirely. For some, the incentives to do this, it varies on the company culture, but they're very minimal. Like, unless it's changed recently. One example I use a lot is Electronic Arts, where everything about their behavior over the past decade or two says they just don't care. Like, they don't care when the games go down, and they tend to not care when, on the rare occasions, fans manage to make a server emulator and resurrect them again. It's just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
So, but there are other companies, I think I have heard statement, I forget which ones, it might even be Ubisoft based on their behavior, where the idea is by killing the old game in the franchise, their mentality is it'll kind of usher people into buying the new game in the franchise. I don't know how much data there is to back that up, though, because even let's say there is some truth to that. Look, the amount of the people who are playing like a years old game and still playing it, like in the crew, it's over 9 years old. Like, that's got to be a minority. And usually they're shutting these things down because the player count is so low on average that it's not worth them running the servers. So that's not that many people at all. Your average gamer is going to want to play whatever is brand new, has lots of marketing and, cool trailers and stuff like that to get people hyped up over. Something nobody's seen before, and it's being marketed to them directly. That's probably where like 90% or more of your sales are. So it's a real minimal thing. It's just that it does require, if you've given no consideration towards it at all in your game design, yes, it does require some effort versus no effort. And since there's currently no penalties for doing this, companies figure, well, why have any effort? But again, it just depends on company culture too, because some companies would never do stuff like this. Others, it's just they don't care. And a few, it's like, yeah, let's kill our old product so no one can ever play it again, so people hopefully buy the new product. So it's...
Yeah, I recently...
But even then,
Sorry. There's a bit of a delay of the Atlantic delay. But I recently picked up and was trying to play The Crew 2 because it was on Game Pass and I have an Xbox, and I was trying to play it, and I was like, honestly, looking at this, it's like, it stylistically, gameplay, all of it, soundtrack, it looks like they were trying to be like, oh, this is an upgrade to the Crew 1. But looking back on the first Crew, I'm like, I kind of prefer the first one. But now that's not even an option. Like, I can't go back and play that one. And it just doesn't make much sense to me because, like you said, 90% of people who are just, driven by mainstream sort of, the sort of ebb and flow of where gaming culture goes, are going to just go to the new game and spend money on it. But especially if there's things like microtransactions, like, why would I want to spend my money on something that I'm going to lose in an indeterminate amount of time? It's just frustrating.
Yeah. And actually, for the Crew 1, I feel like both the Crew and the Crew 2 have significant problems that could both be fixed by modding.
Oh yeah,
to some extent. But in the Crew 2, they actually cut out a bunch of content. Somebody made this comparison video where there's like a big amusement park gone, a space shuttle launch site gone, like small towns gone. Like, so it's like, man, that sucks.
And that's actual work that people, like developers, poured so much time into. So some people were asking me why I don't make my show Crash in Halo Infinite, and the reason why is they haven't released mod tools for Halo Infinite, and I'm pretty sure the reason why is because most of the mod tools won't work very easily because it's an always online game and it's a live service game. I make it back in the Master Chief Collection because they've officially released like the entire dev kit tools, which I think is awesome. And we've been using those to mod the game to have rain and all these different weapons and characters into the Machinima. And I'm like, that makes me want to play these games because I know that community-driven content is kind of like the lifeline long-term for almost any franchise that incorporates it. Like, you can always find a strong contingent of people who love and still play games, especially if it's very accessible to mod the game themselves. But then live service games, because they're so reliant on a central server, seem to be antithetical to the entire idea of modding. Because it's like, we want to create this very curated walled garden sort of experience, and we want you to spend money on it, and we don't want you to go somewhere else. We want to limit your options as much as possible. And it's just frustrating. It's hard to get into a lot of modern games as a result, at least I find.
Yeah, I mean, it just really varies for me. I mean, sometimes, from the player perspective, mod tools are almost, unless they actually opened up a security vulnerability for multiplayer, I would say any other scenario, they're just a positive for the player.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes it's a minor thing, other times it's just, it makes the entire difference of the game, whether you would even play it.
Yeah.
Or in your case, making Machinima, this breathes life into it in a way that just, it's you can't even compare it to a lot of other games, because it's like you're kind of creating your own world within it.
Yeah, exactly.
That wouldn't have been possible. But yeah, you said you don't understand. It's because the people at the top, I mean, by and large, they don't. I mean, yeah, maybe they care about games somewhat, but that's a far second or third or whatever to just, they're there to make the business profitable and move product. And the mentality will probably be the same for any other product. So if they, instead of games, they were selling like cans for like a canning factory or something, the mentality would probably be the same. Or just, there's zero consideration as to like what players want a lot of the time, or especially by the shareholders of the company or that are kind of dictating where this goes, because it's just like a cold calculation, which tends not to be what people who care about creativity and fun experiences like. I mean, there are devs that do this, but they're usually have to be lower in the food chain where they're not being controlled by Wall Street, essentially. So.
Yeah, that makes sense, actually. When you put it that way, it's easy in the midst of all the frustration that this issue causes for me to start like really pushing this idea that a lot of these things are exclusively malicious. But it sounds to me, the more that I think about it, that sometimes it's malicious. Sometimes it's done, like you said, as in an effort to push people onto a new product for them to spend money on. Again, you and I would probably question the efficacy of that sort of tactic to begin with. But It's probably more so that a lot of these larger companies, they're just apathetic. They don't care. Why would they waste time, even if it's minimal effort? Why would they do that unless there was a legalized or a legal incentive to not do it, to not kill games? And that's kind of what the whole campaign's about, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I want to have the fines be higher than whatever it costs to patch the game. I mean, or just, well, not that I would be in control of fines at all, but by bringing this to the attention of a government official, they can decide on the legality of this, especially if it's really looks like it doesn't adhere to existing laws. But no, I think that's the case. I think it could be shifting, but my impression is exactly what you said. It's apathy. That just, well, why spend any dollars on this when we can spend zero, and it's just not even a consideration for us at any point in the pipeline, and it's just safer for us to just shut it all down so that somebody doesn't make a mod or find an exploit or something. But again, I mean, not all companies, but the companies that do the right thing, or let their games last a long time, or go above and beyond and release mod tools, or encourage people doing stuff, they're not really causing this problem.
Yeah, so exactly.
It's an issue with the problem is some of these games that are online only can be pretty good. That's the problem. If they were all terrible, then I wouldn't be doing this.
Well, yeah, that's actually what the frustration is. I mean, I think we're kind of all going through like live service fatigue right now, because I think that there's just, the truth is that live service games, especially now, like the big budget ones, require so much time investment, and the average person just doesn't have the time to split amongst like 7 or 8 big budget live service games. And so the whole genre is kind of dying out, and yet a lot of companies, they think it's like a money printer, and so if they get it right, if they hit that sweet spot, they have like an eternal money printer. But I don't think any of them have, really. I think the only one I can think of that's like that really made it big for so long was like World of Warcraft back in the day, but I haven't even kept up with how well they're doing. But they're not even, I don't know if I would consider them like a modern live service. They're like an old subscription MMO.
Yeah. It sounds like you're kind of blending two different things there, because there's the old school subscription games like World of Warcraft, where you literally pay every month just to, continue using the game. Those have really died off. I'm kind of thankful, actually, because I probably, along with most gamers, hate having to spend money every month on it, especially if you want to play like multiple games. Yeah. Like if you're the sort of game who just plays like one game or one or two and that's it, like that is your game, okay, well then maybe the cost value trade-off is worth it for you. But for everybody else, this is like, no, I'd rather play others, maybe spend money in the games you really want, and then others, maybe you'll buy them on sale or something, that sort of thing. So yeah, thankfully I think, there's World of Warcraft, EVE Online, Final Fantasy 11 and 14. I don't even know if there are other. I think there's at least one other I heard about, but there could be a couple more. But that's almost nothing when you consider that there's just thousands of games. What's happened more is the live service model, which tends to operate under it's either free to play or you buy the core game and as a one-time purchase, and then they keep adding things and microtransactions to kind of keep you on the train with that. And I mean, there definitely are some big winners from that model. I guess probably Fortnite's one of the biggest ones, but
oh yeah, and like Call of Duty Warzone, Roblox, things like that. Yeah,
exactly. Call of Duty stuff. There's some smaller ones too. I mean, again, I've enjoyed Path of Exile. That's one that follows that model where they're, the base game's free, but then the more you play, you kind of have to spend at least some money just to have the quality of life not be hell, for the inventory.
Yeah.
Let's see. Warframe's another one like that. Yeah, there's
Helldivers too. That's a new one. That's a live service that people really love. One. Yeah.
That's another one that gives me very mixed feelings, because when I've seen of it, I'm thinking, wow, this game looks pretty fun, exactly the sort of thing I play. But it's online only. Oh my God, another one. So
yeah. It's frustrating.
Yeah, at least with those games, like I'm conflicted every step of the way. But if and when I do play them, I'm at least playing them cheap. So I tend to wait until like the sales, like years from now, just kind of crash, and then it's like, okay, then I can at least justify the financial loss a little bit more in my head then.
Yeah. That actually makes... And it's funny, actually, you know, I think you're right. In that moment, I kind of caught myself, but it is kind of a conflation between the old school subscription model, which you know what you're getting, right? Like when WoW shuts down, it's done, right? And that's kind of like, that's understood by someone who's playing WoW. It's a subscription service, and it goes on. Whereas I feel like these companies might actually be... relying on, at times at least, relying on this perception that, oh, it's just the same thing. But it's not, because you're paying for like a core game, and then they're just going to revoke your access to it later when they don't need to be doing that. It's not like the entire system, because like with WoW, the entire system it's a massive multiplayer online game, right? Like you need a big central server for multiple players because that's like the core part of the gameplay. But, and again, you might have a game like Helldivers, and of course that's also multiplayer focused, but I feel like you can start to see it creep in where like Destiny 2, looking at Destiny 2, I was really frustrated because I started playing it a few years ago, and I was just playing through the campaign, and then suddenly they vaulted a bunch of the old content to fit in the new content, and I'm like, I don't know if it's one-to-one, but it's this weird thing of a live service where I was like, well, I could play that old content by myself, and now and maybe I paid for some of that, right? I bought the game, and so I'm like, okay, now I can't actually play that content because they wanted to add in this extra content, and now Bungie's kind of, you know, going through some really difficult financial situations and layoffs and things like that, and it calls a lot of what Destiny 2 and all of that content, what the future of that is, because I don't know if they've come out publicly and said that they're going to sunset the game or if there's going to be support afterwards. Like, you just don't know. And when they're connected to a bigger company like Sony or Activision or whatever, it's honestly, it's kind of like the death bell for some of those games, and it's like, it's just interesting to see the way that the industry's been heading very slowly over the last like decade or so.
Yeah, you brought up several things there. Well, I guess the first is you were talking about like the subscription versus the more kind of live service microtransaction model. Yeah, they want people to think it's the same thing, but the thing is, under the law, those are very different. Because the World of Warcraft model, yeah, I hate that concept. I hate the idea of any game with like clear, obvious value to it being destroyed. You know, again, if the games are crap, I wouldn't care. But you know, even if I don't care, even if it's not my kind of game, if it's obvious there's value there and it's somebody else's kind of game, it's like, well, why ruin it for everyone? You know, under the law, those are clearly services. Like well, actually, geez, there's even some gray area there, but for the most part, because with the expansions, those are one-time purchases. But whatever. For sake of argument, let's say those are clearly services. You know exactly when that game's going to stop working if you don't pay your bill for it.
Yeah.
And that meets the pretty clear legal definition of services. So I would think the only argument I could even make against those being destroyed would be from a preservation standpoint. But laws on that are going to be a lot weaker. So I might even be able to do this campaign if they were all truly services.
Yeah.
But again, lucky for us, there's very, very few games that still do that. So that's not the bulk of them. Plus, then you were talking about they don't need to do this thing. Well, yes, but it's a little more complicated than that. Because if you've spent if the entire development cycle of a game is meant to have no consideration for an end-of-life plan at all, yes, it can be considerably difficult to shift that over to something that could run as a standalone thing for people. But it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy too, because one analogy I've made is if you're writing a book and then after the book is written, you realize you have to keep a character alive, you can't kill them at the end. Well, that could involve a ridiculous amount of rewriting depending on how that story was flowing and everything. But if you're starting off with blank pages and you know this character has to stay alive, yeah, it's not anywhere near the amount of work it is as opposed to coming in retroactively and doing it. And the thing is, I'm still kind of waiting for exceptions but even World of Warcraft, there are illicit server emulators for that are hosting thousands of people just on like either rented out machines or sometimes just on home systems, maybe not thousands, but so the point is this stuff can scale. So like let's say an MMO had to shut down and in its heyday it could support 5,000 people. So okay, they realized that the average system isn't going to be able to handle this the way like big server racks could. So we modify the resource usage and instead, okay, now you can only host 100 people or something like that. Well, that's still night and day compared to never being able to run the game again. And even then, some ambitious people might find ways to, if they had access to more of the code or some tools or stuff, they might find ways to optimize it. So no, I think we can get 800 people out of this, even just on a high-end system. So it's you never know with that sort of thing. Oh, and the other thing you're mentioning, like with Destiny, too. Yeah, I've actually played this. I got lucky. I played through the single-player campaign, I think, before they vaulted a bunch of stuff. But yeah, that's also something that's a pretty obvious consumer rights violation. But the reason I didn't pursue that was because that's kind of muddy. Because if the core game works, but the DLC you bought doesn't work, that I'm not going to have a fun time trying to explain that to like a government file clerk that doesn't even know anything about these games, how they work, or what it means. So it's like, whereas at least with the Crew, it's a clean kill. Nobody can run that game in any capacity. So you can tell the government officials, you bought the game, it no longer works. They broke it, and they're preventing you from repairing it because the files are encrypted with the packets and they didn't release any information or anything. So they can understand that. So no, I think the Destiny DLC stuff is just as much of a violation. It's just that's harder for the law to understand because we're kind of dealing with laws that were never written for this sort of thing.
That's true. So, it's interesting that this at least it follows in my mind that this campaign might be good inroads for something like that down the road, right? Like if you have an existing law on the books for clean-cut killing games, let's say, Lord willing, about this whole campaign, and it's successful in that regards, that would actually make a good starting point to then push further for things that are a bit more in the muddy zone. But if that's not a good place to start from, because it's very unclear, and it's better to go after, like you said, the clean kill, the sort of thing that you can explain to somebody who maybe isn't very well versed in tech or games and things like that. And people imagine trying to I'm sure you've seen the video of people going up and trying to explain how Facebook works to people in Congress. And it's kind of it's such a painful video to watch.
Yeah.
And it's very much. I imagine it'd be even worse sometimes with video games. But I mean, I think the Crew is such a strangely blatant example of it. It feels like they are almost openly hostile to the fact that they're killing it. They're like, yeah, we're killing it.
Yeah, and that's happened to plenty of games prior. It's just that the Crew also had a big player base. And the company that published it was also in France, which is inside the European Union. So we have just double the consumer laws to work with from all of that. So it really was like the planets aligning for it to be optimal. I mean, I considered Overwatch also. Well, I was kind of or I should have. I kind of missed the boat on that because that had many more players. But that was a little muddy for one reason I don't want to get into because I don't want to give any ammunition to any Ubisoft lawyers that might find this. And the other reason I will mention is Overwatch, Activision Blizzard, they're located in the USA, their headquarters. Now they have outlets in Europe, but I think theirs is in Switzerland, which is not in the European Union, even though it shares some economic overlap. So it's like, man, trying to tackle that, that just sounds like a mess for something that's already a mess to figure out. So, no, I really think that, look, in my mentality, it's either this or nothing. Like, it's because we're not going to get a better chance for multiple reasons, I think. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's all the more important for us to be doing interviews, an interview like this and getting the word out about it. I'm definitely been telling all the people I know and trying to. It's funny. There's a few YouTubers I watch, and then towards the end of their video, they'll suddenly cut over, and they'll be like, "Oh, if you hate games being killed," like I saw that in Mandalore Gaming's video, like his recent Amnesia review. I was watching that, and I was like, "Hey, look at that!" And it's cool to see the word spreading like that, and. I think that it's so important just because, like you say, art has an intrinsic value, and like I think you're right. Like there's a debate about whether video games are art, but it's undeniable that they contain art, and that people like pour their blood, sweat, and tears into these things, and they deserve to be preserved, to be admired, and to be seen, because art is beneficial and it's beautiful and it's wonderful. And even if like, I think you would even probably agree with me on this, that like. The problem is not if a game has diminished functionality post its like lifespan. It's if it has functionality at all, because that seems to be the common practice. Is that you can't? It's like you boot up the game and it's not like you can drive around in the crew in like a small map. It's like no, you just can't. You can't do anything, and it's like, I mean, ideally we would like to have as the least amount of diminished functionality as possible, but like the fact that this art and all of the work is just completely wiped off the map, and it doesn't need to be necessarily, and yet it is. And for whether it's apathy or malice, it's like there's a massive reason for consumer rights just to protect these things. And I think it's a moral issue. I think it's also like a economic issue. I think it touches on so many different things, and I think you're right. It's kind of like the stars kind of align for this, and it's super important, because like, if we're successful in this campaign, all of us who are working on it and trying to spread the word, if this campaign is successful, it makes history and it can be super important. But if it fails, at least we tried, right? Like, you can't let it slip past you.
Yeah, this won't be an issue of, oh, if only we had done more. You know, no, that we don't have to worry about that with what I'm working on. Like, it'll be very black and white with how it goes. And yeah, as for the art thing, I kind of included that line about the debatable stuff because from my perspective, it's like, I don't care whether others consider it art or not. I think they're utterly amazing aesthetic experiences from games that probably deliver more of what a lot of art hopes to attain, at least from my experiences. So it's like, whether that's officially considered art or not, it's just, I don't care at all. So I just kind of threw that about the debatable just to kind of throw a bone for people who feel like, no, this isn't art or anything like that. It's like, okay, fine. Well, it's still a consumer issue then, you know? So,
yeah, exactly. It affects so much.
It still has value to some people, you know, even if it's not at the level people might consider it. But
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also really important because like it's good to take a stand on this sort of issue now, because I feel like if there's no resistance to this sort of development in how things are going in the games industry, who knows what that can grow into later on, you know? Like a lot of single player games are still easily accessible and you can play them, but who knows if companies think that they can get away with just killing games, there's not much that can stop them then from starting to do that with even single player games. You know, like starting to write that into the EULAs and whatnot. Like, if they did decide, if somehow the data says, yeah, we do make more money if we kill the game and make people play the next one instead. Like, I feel like it's just such an important issue to take a stand on.
Yeah, I've definitely gotten the impression that the opportunity to change this, the window is closing, but it is definitely still open, and we're coming in with almost every other advantage on it. So again, I really feel like this is it, at least from my perspective, that if we don't make progress here, like, it's done. Like, yeah. But because I won't even mention all the reasons, because again, I don't want to give any ammunition the opposite side on this, but the ones I don't mind mentioning is I think a lot of younger players, especially, may not realize what's actually possible and like how things have worked in the past, and because like even I'd say even the majority of gamers right now, they still think single player there's no reason to have this, but for multiplayer it's much more accepted than I think it should be. Like if you were to, I'm old enough that if you could rewind the clock, I don't know, 20, 25 years, they would consider like these just insane, the excuses for killing multiplayer. But it's been kind of gradually accepted so that like the average gamer considers it normal when just a multiplayer game gets shut down. Again, even as I'm saying, there are people right now running server emulators for MMOs with up to thousands of people in them. And so if you have that functionality, well, what's the excuse for something like an arena shooter where you have, like a dozen players or something in it, so there's that aspect of it. And also you brought up a good point with the EULA, or the end user license agreement, because there's probably somebody in your audience thinking, well, yeah, this is cute and all that you're doing all this, but they say it pretty clearly you can't do that. Well, it gets complicated, but in the United States, that's generally true and going to be the case, which is why I'm incredibly pessimistic on it. In other countries, it does not matter what you are writing into there. If that goes against the law, then it's not worth anything what you wrote down. You may as well write down that you owe them a goat or something, or 5 chickens. Like if the law says that's not how the commerce works for this kind of product, then it doesn't matter what you write. It's completely null and void. So that's why I'm getting it tested in countries that still have like some consumer protection laws with teeth on this issue.
Yeah. 1 second. Let me check and make sure that OBS is still going strong here. It is. Yeah. Okay. Because I was I was sitting here.
If we're recording.
Yeah. I was sitting here, and then suddenly the intrusive thought came in, and I was like, I hope this is all recording right now. Okay, so we're all good. All right, we can continue on. But yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, especially because like a lot of people who, multiplayer games are really huge, especially like for a lot of younger generations. Just look how Fortnite's even like marketed, honestly. And a lot of them just don't have the frame of reference for how games used to be. Like the thing about it was a lot of old multiplayer games, even games like the Halo 2 and Halo 3 and things like that, yeah, they did have a lot of central servers, but like Halo 3, you could do peer-to-peer connections to play multiplayer games together. And like that was really like, and the fact that they've moved away from that almost entirely is frustrating, because it's like, it's not like, I think you pointed out in the video that Google at one point made the excuse that it's impossible, and that was just a bold-faced lie, that it wasn't impossible for them to fix a particular issue, but that was their defense for things like that. And I've heard some companies come out and say things like that, where they're like, oh, it's just the way the game's structured. It's like, well, you had to intentionally build the game that way from the beginning. Yeah. Like, so that doesn't absolve you of responsibility for this, or just make it not like, oh, it's all okay. You intentionally did it.
Yeah. It's really hard because we made it really hard. And yeah, it wasn't Google, it was Microsoft with Internet Explorer when they had the antitrust lawsuit a while back.
Oh, that's...
But yeah, same difference. It's... The thing is, yeah, that's... Okay, well, no, I got to be careful talking about stuff that the legal opposition could potentially weaponize. So
yeah, we'll leave that for
more
an after action report. Yeah,
a year from now or something.
Once it's settled, you'll be like, okay, now we can talk about it a bit more.
But like this, I'll say I'm not aware of any game that if it was really a priority, there's not a way you could put it from a technical perspective. Like if that was the priority, to have an end-of-life plan for it. I'm not aware of any game and I've played a fair number of games. So.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're okay with it, I'd like to move on to some, we've talked about this for a good little length. You want to move on to some more, like, casual questions?
Your podcast. Anything. We mentioned StopKillingGames.com. From there on, it can be whatever you want.
Okay, cool. So. Awesome, yeah. How's the movie coming along?
that it's been completely stalled because of this campaign I'm doing. And if there's a game, I haven't played it, but I remember the title, Serious Sam's Bogus Detour. That's how this feels. This is a bogus detour from what I was hoping to. I was hoping to have been like neck deep in the movie by right about now. Actually, that was my original plan.
Absolutely. If you ever need, I've made a few Machinima now, and we're doing some cool stuff with it. If you ever need help or anything, I cast my hat into the ring. If you ever need help with that, it'd be an honor to help you out with that. Make it easier. Many hands make light labor and all.
Yeah, speaking of Machinima, since I guess this is more for your audience here, I've seen some really good Halo Machinima in the past, but I forgot the names of a lot of them. I found one, and then another one I found the name of, but now I can't find a copy of it. So now I'm worried that it's like lost media now. Well, the one I like that is still up is probably a lot of your audience has seen it. Is Bad Soda. Have you?
I've heard of that.
If you haven't seen it,
I need to
I'll
check
give you
out
a link after this. Yeah. Oh, it's short, but it's great. It's just my kind of humor. Another one that I cannot find now. It was a series. I think it was called Practical Nonsense. And there was one episode where like this guy's stopping by a gas station, and it's I don't know. It for me, it kind of channeled sort of like, for my taste, were the sort of like the best of like the red versus blue kind of dynamic, where it's just two guys talking, but it's just kind of escalating in the seriousness of it. And
Machinima is such a wonderful thing, especially now, because it's like there's so much more tools now available. Like compared to like 2007, what you can do now with Machinima is so much more accessible, and it's crazy that it hasn't had more of a resurgence, if I'm being honest, just because.
Well, let me ask you, what would you recommend besides Halo then, like for?
So I guess I can say this publicly. So we had, I don't know if with the Fallout show coming out. With the Fallout show coming out, I don't know if it's necessary, but I was like wanting to make a Fallout series, and I've written one out. Somebody commented on the first episode of Crash, and they were like, "Oh, this inspires me. I wanted to make a space engineer's Machinima," and I instantly that like sparked something in my head where I'm like, "That's a brilliant idea. I could think of tons of hilarious like these dudes floating in space building a giant ship. Like, I could think of a lot of zany stories you can build around that. That'd be super fun. A lot of games that just have mod stuff. So I think." It's funny, I don't see a lot of like Fallout or Skyrim Machinima, but I actually think that's one of the more accessible modding like games that you can get into very easily that actually has some good like presentation. And so I was looking into modding Fallout 4 for a future Machinima after like maybe season 1 of Crash is wrapped up. But yeah, Fallout, I think Halo's still really good with the mod tools. I think the Source Engine, like just Source Engine games in general, like you've made Silver Protection, and like I think that the art style and the accessibility and the amount of content and mods that are out for that, like there's a lot you can do with that. And I actually think that the Source Engine is surprisingly approachable from like a learning perspective. At least it's been for me so far in working with it. There's a few hiccups, but that's one.
It's a pure love-hate thing with me. I've got, and from both sides of it too, because I start off with the Source SDK, with the map editor, Hammer, and the face poser. And then later, the Source Filmmaker came out, and it was like a complete yin-yang. If one was good at something, then the other was awful at it. And it was just, because I did one, full video in Source Filmmaker, the Stranger in Need one. And it's, I don't know, I've put like this, more power to you. Yes, the capability is there, and more power to you if you can handle Source Engine. I'll say the Source Engine is the reason I'm not doing the movie in it.
So, that's fair,
despite my background on it. So
yeah, I can imagine that after a while you just get so like, yeah, I can see that. It's funny, in Crash, for the first 4 episodes, I made it on the Xbox, so I didn't have access to mods at all. And so what I would do is, for extra things, I would superimpose Gary's mod footage with models imported from Halo, from the game. So it's like the same, same graphical fidelity and whatnot. And then I would superimpose them in using green screens and stuff like that. And that was really fun, but now that we're working with mods, we can actually import those models into the engine, animate them, and the lighting matches like 1-to-1. And it's so much, it's a lot of fun, but like the truth is, like, honestly, trying to work with a lot of old game engines, I always say it feels like I'm trying to go in and decipher ancient runes, because a lot of times these things were not designed for people just to immediately come in and work on them with no prior knowledge. They were like built by somebody. Like if you go into Bungie's like map editing stuff for Halo, you can see a bunch of references and little notes that don't make sense to you because they were written with like inside jokes and things like that. And those are always really fun to discover.
Yeah, well, but fun for you. Well, I guess the notes would be fun. I was gonna say I've been on the other end of that, where, well, sort of like with Half-Life, when I did one of the silver protections, I had one of them drop an object, and I ended up getting emails asking like, how did you do that? Because that happens in Half-Life 2 when I think like Barney throws the crowbar and when Kleiner sets down a clipboard.
Yeah.
But the code for that is only for that exact scene and doesn't work on anything else. So even though there are references to like detach the object, it just doesn't work. So the way I did it was like this sort of trial and error, where what I would do is when I wanted him to drop something, because you can attach objects to their hand and or other body parts, but you couldn't let them go. So what I did was I had him open his hand, and as he's doing that, I simultaneously told the engine to destroy the object he was holding and then teleport in a physics object and then try to align it just right so that it would look like it's dropping. And that's the only way I was able to do it. So that's why I had these emails saying, how did you do that? Because, you know, you're not supposed to be able to do that, like at least back then. So.
Yeah, oh my gosh, working on Crash. Oh no. So there's been so many little like technical issues that you have to like find creative solutions to work around, and it drives you up the wall because you're like, why won't this work? And then you realize like there's a little issue in Halo 3's engine where if you interact with, if a player is standing next to an object that's a physics object, there's like a certain cycle of updates where it'll update to be like, okay, you're near this object, that means this object can probably move. So we're going to continue to update its like physics to be like, okay, let it be a movable object. Otherwise, if you're far away from it, they kind of just freeze it in place. And so that's the best I can tell. And so when characters are standing next to the objects, it'll occasionally just bounce slightly. And so in episode 2 of Crash, I noticed that in the edit. And so what I did was I just threw it's a radio next to the characters. And I decided it was supposed to be just playing some generic music, like surfer rock music. But then I made it so it shoots sparks out and it says error and then changes the music every time. And that was the only solution I could find to work around without going back and reshooting it all. And I was like, oh, that's so frustrating. But I was happy I got that to work. But man, that's super interesting, because my first thought when you were explaining that, I was like, I probably would have just had, if you could, I would be like, yeah, just delete the object and replace it like almost simultaneously and just try to blend the footage together. And then you explained it. I'm like, yep, that sounds like the source engine that I know. Like, that sounds like the difficulties I've had with the SDK.
I have to get, man, I got to make more notes. There was a title. Someone made a really good video on what using the Source engine was like. This was for Team Fortress 2 and Source Filmmaker, and he went by and just looked like he was having problems with the color. I forget. Man, I've got to find that. That was a really good video. It summed up exactly what you're dealing with. Even though these were totally different issues than what I had, like spiritually, it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
You know?
It's Machinima is actually fun though. I mean, I think that like there's so many advantages to like the fact that I can go and reshoot a scene and then make it look identical, and it's an outdoor scene, as opposed to the day of shooting is different. Now their hair looks slightly different between takes, and you can see that in like big Hollywood movies even. But like the fact that Machinima is something that is it's frustrating. So like I think that there's more tools available now, but I think that the YouTube algorithm doesn't seem to like Machinima very much. Like, there was a time when Machinima was really big, but nowadays it seems like most Machinima that I see are usually like 5 minutes long. And I actually kind of attribute the fact the first episode of Crash got about 170,000 views out of nowhere. And I actually attributed the fact that it was 30 minutes. And I was told by several people, they were like, if it was 5 minutes, I probably wouldn't have checked it out. But you're like, someone's like, this madman made a machinima that's 30 minutes long. Like, what is he doing? Like, okay, I got to at least see what this is. And it's funny because a lot of long form, it's either super short form content the algorithm likes, like shorts, obviously, or really long form content that the algorithm likes nowadays. It's kind of frustrating because there's a lot of mid-range content that's just really good.
Yeah, remember, I think there was I think somebody made a video series review on Oblivion, and it was like a short analysis, and it was literally like 20 hours or something.
Yeah, he does one of Skyrim as well, and it's so long because he just goes through like every single thing. And I'm like, you know what, man? If you had fun doing that, I can't imagine, but you know what? They're for the grace of God.
That's what I mean with those. That's what I mean about people where they pick a game and that is their game.
Yeah. Absolutely.
They are going to exhaust it. So those are the types of people that subscription might make sense. But even then, they'd rather probably just buy it once and save themselves thousands of dollars over time.
No, exactly. Yeah. It's what's interesting is that I think I was talking with somebody about this. I played through Alan Wake 2 and I adored the game. It's a single player only game and I adored it, but it's got like a AA budget. I mean, it's something like 60 million, which again, that's a lot of money, but compared to like a lot of other huge games, that's a pretty small budget, and like what they're able to accomplish with that smaller budget is insane.
Oh, I bet. And of course, budget means less nowadays because I mean, of course, past a certain point, obviously, because now I was thinking I guess it's a stretch to call it a game, but if you want to talk about the biggest budget thing ever that's could arguably be a game, would be Metaverse. You know, you know how much how much money went into that?
I forgot about that.
I believe it's 36 billion. Let's see. Metaverse billion.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's something. Okay. Okay. Maybe 46 billion. Excuse me, 46.5 according to 2023 article. And like, how much does something like what's the biggest budget like mainstream game? I'm thinking maybe Red Dead Redemption 2 or something like that.
Yeah, I think it might be like Grand Theft Auto 6 is probably one of the biggest ones now.
Do they have numbers for that?
I seem to recall. I have the memory of a goldfish.
Okay, well here, let's go with Red Dead Redemption 2. That's about as big as it gets, you know. 370. They're saying a budget between 370 to 540 million. So the Metaverse is going to be the winner for a long time. Like I honestly, I've thought about it. I don't even know how you would spend that much on a game, like if you told me that's my budget, because if you can make, especially because they also had hardware and VR research and stuff in-house, you know, so
yeah,
that's a big saved expense right there. And so yeah,
well, what's interesting is that these big live service games have these massive budgets, and then it's not surprising why they want to push microtransactions so much, because they've got to make their money back, and they're not going to be able to make their money back just selling even a $70 or $80 game as the entry. And it's just insane because after playing like Alan Wake 2, it has a comparatively very small budget. It's like a AA. Remedy's like a AA, you know, if you want to use that term. But like, it's one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen, and it has so much passion put into it. And I'm like, you can tell that they were able to stretch that 60 million far beyond what they should be able to. And like, that's the case a lot for even like tiny indie games. Like you look at like something like Lethal Company, and it got massive returns because it was a very small budget game with a lot of passion and energy poured into it. Whereas these massive games that have 7-digit like or 8, like, you know, however many crazy amount budget, and it's like there is just no conceivable way for them to make their money back without at least being strongly tempted to go into predatory microtransactions and other monetary practices.
Yeah, I have to wonder what the numbers are, because, well, I guess the ultimate example, or one of them, for low budget versus getting the money back will probably be something like Minecraft.
Oh yeah,
That's
Minecraft would be the
become
ultimate
its own
example of that.
empire.
But
No, what I was thinking is a lot of the money that goes into this, I think it's getting that kind of photorealism or the animation realism that makes it like near lifelike. However, I'm wondering how many gamers like really, I mean, yeah, people like that, but I'm wondering how much for versus the amount of money it takes to get you there. Whereas it's, say you had, something that doesn't have exactly lifelike graphics, like you can tell it's a game, and maybe it's like, let's say to like bring the budget down a bunch, it's like say PlayStation 3 era graphics or something like that, or later Xbox 360 graphics. If the gameplay was like really solid and you have good music, good art direction, good gameplay or writing, I'm wondering if how much of that is even necessary for having the kind of photorealistic stuff that is probably where all this money is going into, or a lot of it anyway.
yeah, speaking of Remedy, yesterday I was playing. I haven't played through it, and I was playing through the first Max Payne game, and I was looking at it. I'm like, yes, this game's very clearly dated, but like you can tell that they were getting very creative with what they were working with. Like when Max Payne runs, and you can see like the belt on his jacket moves separately. I'm like, there's no physics in this game. That was all hand animated, and it works, and it looks good. I have a friend who's much younger than I am. He was born well after Max Payne 1 came out, and he was watching me play it, and he's like, wow, this game looks really good. And I'm like, yeah, man, honestly, passion, art direction, all these things are really underrated. Like, if you do look up Alan Wake 2, it's funny because for their cutscenes, it's Remedy, right? It's the guys who made Max Payne. And so they'll do this thing where they cut between live action. And so, like, the characters are based off of, like, their actual actors. And so occasionally they'll have, like, these moments where the cutscenes will turn into live action and they'll kind of blend back and forth. And it looks really interesting, and I'm like, I bet they saved so much money doing that, like doing the live action cutscenes and just making it blend with the gameplay. And it's just interesting because, like, I think Alan Wake 2 is one of the best looking games I've ever seen, and it cost a fraction of how much Red Dead 2. And Red Dead 2 looks good, don't get me wrong, but like that chasing the photorealism, I think expression and art style in my book is at least a bit more important, longevity wise.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, as long as we're hitting, like, I don't know, PlayStation, for me personally, PlayStation 2 graphics for like a 3D game, but I'm pretty happy. So I care more about like details and, again, art direction, so that it's like at least nice use of color and lighting, and sort of, and the gameplay, of course, Yeah, don't give me spoilers, but for Alan Wake 2, I know it might be the most graphically demanding game right now.
Oh yeah,
I'm not sure, but like I remember, like even video cards from a few years ago can't run it because they're trying to incorporate more advanced options with it, and the screenshots alone are just looking mind-blowing. But
yeah, it's probably my favorite game of the year. Like it's weird because I know a lot of people who dislike it, but for me it felt like somebody like went into my brain and was like, hey, we're gonna make the game you've always wanted for a long time, just stylistically, and it's a very specific experience. I would highly recommend it. I played on my Series X, but even then I have to put it on performance mode, which is crazy now that consoles have a performance mode. Like, it's like, oh yeah, switch it over. Ray tracing makes it go down to like 20 frames a second. And I'm like, that's
the whole strength. Yeah, that's kind of eroded because the whole strength of consoles is you put it in, you start it. Don't have to think about it past that,
Personally, I'm okay with more options for like detail and stuff in consoles. I think that's a welcome change, but it is weird because it doesn't feel like they're doing it because they're like, oh, this is a good change. It feels more like they're like, okay, you want the pretty graphics or do you want it to run well?
Yeah, well, I guess the thing is, okay, well, yeah, you talk about more options, but the idea is the consoles are known hardware to spec for. That's kind of the developer's job for, like, especially big budget titles, to make it look and run as well as they can on that console. It's by splitting it up. Well, again, it's changing, but that's always been my mentality on it, is that, the strength of it is you don't have to think, you just play it, and there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I feel like console gaming and PC gaming is on this weird, at least my reading is that they're almost on this weird collision course where I'm honestly seeing consoles becoming more like PC, like like a personal computer. I mean, there was a rumor that they were going to allow Xbox to run Windows, and I'm like, you know what? If they allowed an Xbox to run Windows, I could see a lot of people buying a Series X as like a relatively strong budget PC. And like that would be very interesting, but it would be weird to see how the game landscape. I know you were talking about in videos before, Microsoft basically abandoned the PC market and just gave it all away to Valve. And like,
yeah,
now they're starting to go back on that.
They're trying to reclaim it somewhat now, but it's I guess the one thing I do like about that merging is we're seeing a lot less exclusives. So I mean, I'm happier when, you know, more people can play the game how they want to, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
have access to more games. So.
Yeah, gosh, I'm come to think of it. Yeah, Microsoft basically has abandoned the idea of Xbox exclusives, and I'm all here for it. Like every game that comes out on the Xbox is now also on PC, and it usually almost always runs really well on the PC.
Even Sony, like, I'm not sure what they're doing, but I like it so far, where they'll have their exclusive, and then a year or two later, it gets ported to PC. And I'm thinking, like, sure, keep doing that.
Like, why not? I mean, honestly, it's funny because it's like I don't want to get a PlayStation at all because I'm like it's an investment for. I'm a big single player guy, and I know PlayStation's big on single player, but honestly, I've looked at it and I'm like, I might as well just get it. I need a new PC to work with Crash because I do all the body acting using like multiple controllers and multiple instances of the game connected in the all together using LAN party, and so I can run up to 16 versions of the game, and I'm like, yeah, my PC cannot run 16 it doesn't matter if it's from 2007. I can't run 16 instances of Halo 3. I can run maybe at most 6 before the thing starts to crap itself. And I'm like, I need a new PC. Why would I spend money on a PlayStation if they're just going to port their games over like a year or two later? I can wait. Like, it feels like the industry is punishing me for being an early adopter, where I'm like, I might as well just wait.
I felt like that. I have felt like that a long time now. I consider brand new AAA games to be late betas. I mean, it's a friend of mine said that he generally thought that was true except for Nintendo.
Yeah.
Apparently, Nintendo still does, quality assurance. Well, Microsoft. Well, I guess this wasn't for Xbox, but who knows? Maybe it bled over there. Microsoft laid off a bunch of their quality assurance department like years back, and it's mostly AI driven now.
Oh man. The other fun questions. Okay, so what are some games or genres of games you find yourself gravitating to recently?
Well, recently nothing, because I haven't played a game. It's got to be around 3 to 4 weeks now because I've been so busy on this campaign. It's making me a little batty. I'm gonna want to definitely get, but I before that, it can kind of cycle in and out with me, like which ones I'm going with. Because I was looking at because I can sometimes gravitate towards theme just as much as genre. But I mean, I guess like kind of third-person action-adventure games, first-person shooters, driving games sometimes, or real-time strategy games. Or ones I kind of shift in and out, and I don't know. It tends to be those are the ones where I kind of like want like a certain type from a genre for, but others they can kind of like a certain game has some hook to it that intrigues me that I want to get into. But yeah, I guess action RPGs are another one.
Yeah, I don't end up playing a lot of RPGs nowadays. Like I said, I was playing Alan Wake 2, and I think the hook for me there was that it's very, very heavily inspired by like Twin Peaks, and that's like my jam. Like, yeah. I love that vibe, and I love the mystery and the gameplay, and I'm like, oh, this is just.
Have you seen? It's not Twin Peaks exactly. Have you seen the show From?
I can't say I have.
I would recommend. Yeah, it's just called From. I would recommend it. I would call it. I guess it's a little more like Lost, but like in a small town, but it makes a little bit more sense.
Is this the show that's about the creatures that walk around with? I saw some shorts about it where it's like this show where these people are surviving in a small town and there's creatures that look like people walking around smiling and stuff.
Yeah, that's it.
I've seen some clips that I was like, oh, that's haunting. I may need to check that out.
I enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, okay.
That was right up my alley. But,
I've written it down. Yeah, definitely. I personally love the whole. I mean, I live in Appalachia. I'll say that much. And something about the whole vibe, the mountains and the deep grottos and valleys and ravines and things like that. Something about that environment. I went up to last 2 years ago now, I guess. I went up to Bar Harbor, Maine, with my wife, and we spent like 2 weeks there. And I was like, oh, I kind of just love the Northeast, like New England sort of vibe. You know, it was rainy and foggy the entire time, and most people are like, oh, that sucks. I'm like, no, man, that's perfect. That's exactly what you want when you're up there. It's that you want to feel like some creatures will come out of the woods at any moment.
Yeah, did you ever see the mini series they made the live action mini series they made for the original Alan Wake?
I have.
Bright Falls.
Yeah, okay. I saw that. It was really quite good. It's interesting. I don't know if you've played it, but there's the game they made before Alan Wake 2 was Control, and it was I just finished it before Alan Wake 2, and it ties into Alan Wake 2 a bit in a few areas, which is interesting because it's the same universe. And it's super. I've been working on another story with a friend, and that game and that whole universe has inspired a story that's going to be quite fun. But it's good to see art.
I might have a minority report on Control where I feel like it's like, okay, Control, they're almost like a little too open-ended for me, because it just because at first I'm kind of intrigued in the mystery, but then it just kind of keeps opening up more and more, and in my opinion didn't resolve that much, so it almost kind of feels more like a freeform abstract experience rather than like a mystery you're unraveling. But
yeah, I'd say
people did like it.
Yeah, I had mixed feelings on Control. There was things like the opening 10 minutes had me hooked. I was like, this is fascinating. I want to know so much more. And there's definitely a lot of cool, like the gameplay's fun. I like the art design. I thought their artist did a wonderful job. But there was too much of me wandering around not knowing where I was going or what I was doing for my taste.
Yeah, there's a lot of that too.
And so I was like, okay, the wonder and the mystique kind of wears off if you're just kind of lost. There's wandering and then there's wandering. And like...
Yeah.
It didn't do that so much. I still like the game.
Yeah, Control probably... Jeez, that's pretty strong praise that might be my least favorite Remedy game.
Your least favorite Remedy game? You're like, oh, it's okay. Had some problems.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's pretty good praise.
It's interesting that Alan Wake 2 I felt like it's not nearly as open-ended. It's a lot more directed. So I think you'll probably end up liking it a lot. I'd love to see a game dungeon on it sometime. That would be fun, because I feel like you'd probably, it's so abstract. You probably have a lot of thoughts.
Okay, I was going to say it's going to be a long time because I know how demanding it is. But then there is that frame insertion technology that's been released that, okay, well, maybe that you can, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like with some games you can get like a 60% performance boost. And that's almost like a generation and a half on video cards. So maybe I'll get to it sooner than I realize with like some mods and hacks to get the performance in line so I could just barely kind of keep up with it. I'll see.
Yeah, I know. I was watching a Game Dungeon recently, and you said that you didn't really like RTS, but you said that, or not RTS, turn-based like games.
Yeah.
And
I love RTS.
Yeah.
Well.
Have you played Homeworld Deserts of Karak?
Yes.
Yeah,
through that.
Yeah, I just got it. And I've been enjoying it. Sorry, tangent, ADHD. That broke my heart because I know what you're talking about. Like, there's a lot of turn-based games I don't like. The only turn-based game that I can stomach is XCOM. Like, I really liked XCOM because it feels like it's super heavy strategy. It's not just, extended slap fight. It feels more like positioning and taking calculated risks as opposed to you hit me and then I hit you and stuff like that.
It has a strong cult following, I know.
And
I played a handful I've been able to get through, but nowadays I'm either going to use a hack or watch a playthrough, I think. I just don't have it. There's so many games is the problem. Like, man, this is going to... if I'm not enjoying the gameplay, but I'm intrigued about the story and the setting, it's like, man, I got to find something else. Actually, I heard there. Oh man, I forgot the name of it. I saw a news article. And I was thinking, oh man, I wish more games had this, where somebody made a mod. It's for, oh yeah, that's right. I think it's for the Warhammer Rogue Trader game, which is like this big full RPG, but it is turn-based fighting. Somebody made a mod to like skip like 99% of the combat, so it becomes more of like a choose your own adventure kind of game. I was thinking, oh man, I would want that for like more than a few games. Like I know everybody's raved about it, but that's one of the reasons I'm in no hurry to try out Baldur's Gate 3, because, well, it's turn-based combat. That's a big ask for me. But yeah.
Yeah, turn-based doesn't do much for me. I think the only reason XCOM grabbed me. Oh, also XCOM 2 has a Freeman mod. I don't know if you've seen that, where somebody ported. Yeah, somebody. I'll send you the link to the video. But you can get voice packs for your soldiers in XCOM, and somebody did a Freeman's Mind voice pack, and they just took a bunch of Freeman's Mind quotes out of like away from their context and apply it for like, oh, when he's running from cover to cover, or like even use. It sounds like using the flamethrower, like you're the reason we have napalm, or things like that.
Well, I have the original voice isolated voice tracks for almost all my videos, if they wanted them.
This was a few years ago.
Maybe that's somebody who approached me about it, and I don't remember. But
yeah, I'll send you the link. It's quite a fun video.
As long as they're not selling them, that's fine. If they're selling them, give me a cut.
It's on Steam
I'm not
Workshop.
against that either. So, yeah.
Well, it's funny because I've watched a bunch of people play XCOM 2, and occasionally I'll see people who are doing the playthrough, and they'll always just have Freeman. Just one of the. It's like, oh, here's the Halo Reach characters, and oh, over there's Freeman. And it's just the one orange dude, and he has it's your voice coming out of him screaming about aliens.
Oh, wow, okay.
And it actually fits quite well because of XCOM setting, fighting aliens and things like that. I'll send you the video. It's quite funny.
No, I mean I can directly attribute a lot of my success just from Valve making Half-Life and me being able to ride that wave.
Oh yeah.
You know.
It's speaking of Freeman's Mind, like that is a show that had an unhealthy amount of influence on my sense of humor growing up, because I was pretty young when I started watching it. And no, I mean that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's just kind of like Freeman. You made Freeman such a fascinating. You took a character who's a blank slate and you made him such an unconventional but fascinating person to watch.
That was the idea, because I knew if I had any chance of going through the game and doing this, I was going to have to make him just as dynamic a personality as I could. So that was kind of my mentality. And plus, I figure if you were going to survive Black Mesa, yeah, you would have to be kind of paranoid. Like a paranoid person who's just already wired like that's who's going to survive.
Somebody was saying that Freeman sort of loses his mind over the course of the series, and I'm like, I think if you listen closely, you could tell he's pretty unhinged from day one. And he just kind of like rolls from the punches.
It certainly gets worse, because I'm looking at it from like that level of stress would just kind of wear on you one way or another.
Yeah. But it's not like he was a normal dude before. He was always kind of a wacko from beginning, and then you just see it start to blossom.
Yeah, I definitely had that.
Like, oh my gosh, yeah, it's so good. And I mean, I love Silver Protection just because like it's a similar vein of comedy, but like the character dynamic, the fact that you were able to get so much out of just two characters interacting, like those two personalities just clashing with each other, is so fun.
You know, when we were talking Machinima earlier, it was giving me like sort of flashbacks. Maybe I'll still do it, of thinking, I could have had 10 times the number of Silver Protection episodes I have. The thing that holds it all up is the animation, the production, all that. Because I'm thinking, man, maybe I really should have just had two characters. I had problems limiting myself is the problem. I would get too ambitious, because I was thinking maybe I really should have just had a lot of skits where they're just kind of talking and just have like the most basic animations. I could have had a lot more. But I still can do that. But it's like, I know part of me has kind of missed my window a bit for that. But I kind of hope to redeem myself with the movies. So
yeah, I was actually, it was funny. Had to cut this because we talked about some behind the scenes stuff that I don't want to spoil.
It's only the past year or two I've just tried to take an absolute hard stop policy on not doing all-nighters. Because I hated it. I hated it so much. No. But sometimes that was unfortunately, it's due to, I guess, underestimating time allocation on my part, but I've had more than a few videos that the only way they made it out on time was because of that. So.
Oh yeah, I recall.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure the last few episodes of Freeman's Mind were probably a blur to you.
Oh god, those were rough times. Yeah, it came out all right. So.
I think it came out wonderfully. I think that the last few episodes of Freeman's Mind for the first season of Freeman's Mind were just absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
And Freeman's Mind 2. You've been working on that. I know it's probably on hold with...
Not lately.
I
need to, but yeah.
It's I've been loving every minute of that, and I love seeing how Freeman reacts to all the different sort of strange things.
Yeah, I have to really... I'll have to do kind of like a more marathon session where I can just get ahead a bunch of episodes.
Yeah.
Once I'm looking forward to getting back to normal videos as opposed to like reading what laws are in consumer agencies and... At least I think a lot of my fan base understands.
Oh yeah.
So they get it. And I tried multiple times to try to get somebody else to step up on this, and whatever. You know, I keep thinking, from what the Avengers movies of Thanos saying, fine, I'll do it myself.
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
That's how I feel about it. So,
it's one of those things where it's funny when I read throughout history and things like that, there's a lot of people who'd step up to really important things, and the sentiment that I often read about in like their personal memos and whatnot is, I can't wait for this to be over.
I'm there. Yeah, I'm through the worst of it. That's the upside. I'm through there's still a lot left to tie up some loose ends and just drum up enough publicity to ensure this is just like maximum energy coming.
You're putting all the momentum you can into it, try to get it rolling.
Yeah, but there's still some things I need to see through. But like, I'd say easily half. Like I could get hit by a truck, it's still gonna go on. You know? So that's something.
That'd be a hit to the cause, but it wouldn't be a kill shot to the cause necessarily.
No, and in some cases it probably wouldn't even make much difference because it's so much is underway.
That's good. That's good though. Now you can take a step back and.
Well, not yet. Look, like I said, I'm treating this like it's my only shot at this.
It's not fully stepping back.
So I got to do it right, you know.
Yeah, but at least not. It's not going to be the same uphill sort of Sisyphus push as it was before.
It's very slowly getting easier.
Yeah, that's
soon
good.
I'll be able to play a game again.
Well, yeah. Here's hoping, right? Well, thank you for being on. I don't want to. We've been going for a lot longer than I was anticipating, but
that's all right.
I'll just consider it getting you away from the chaos for just a little bit, just to chat and hang out.
It's kind of. I can justify this to an extent.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of went through a lot of the questions. I don't think there's any questions left that I had planned. So, yeah, keep doing what you're doing. Thank you for all the work that you're doing with both with this and also with just the content you made. Like that content.
Yeah. I'll get back to. I hope to get back at least halfway to normal videos, but before the end of the month. So.
Oh, my wife. Here's a question. My wife told me to ask you this because she was listening to me. Like I had a video on, and she was like, "Have you ever been told that you sound kind of like the abominable snowman from Monsters Inc.?"
I think I've seen that comment once, and I actually I still haven't seen Monsters Inc.
Oh, that's a good one.
I kind of missed. This will increase this will bump it up on the list for me. I can judge for myself. I know when I did Mike's voice for Civil Protection, a lot of people thought it sounded like Ray Romano, which I wasn't familiar with either at the time. So
I can see that.
I'll check I have to check it out now because I heard a lot of people say it's good. But
oh yeah, it's one of those older Pixar movies. It's from that generation when Pixar movies were.
Yeah, well, Pixar usually has a pretty decent quality standard.
Some of the recent stuff hasn't grabbed me nearly as well, but that was definitely like the mid 2000s. They were really on their A game right around then. So, yeah. Well, thanks for chatting. We'd love to have you back on sometime. Good luck with everything. Thanks for spending, gosh, it's like probably an hour and a half or something like that now.
It's all right. It didn't go on longer than I thought, but I wasn't losing my voice or anything. So
yeah. All right.
No interview tomorrow that I know of. I haven't checked my email since I've been doing this. No, we may have an insider to another member of parliament in the EU, and they were talking about submitting a direct request to the EU Commission on this. So we might be able to jumpstart this a lot in EU and skip through it. Kind of have a shortcut mode, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, here's hoping that the momentum keeps up and that you're able to take your hands off a little bit and at least, pick up a controller or something,
Yeah. I'm getting there.
Alrighty.
Yeah, at least it's not like, until just like less than a week ago, it felt like every day that I felt like if I don't get on top of at least some of this, I'm bottlenecking things in a way that's going to be kind of tangible the longer it goes on. So I feel like anything I'm bottlenecking now, it's not like, oh my God, priority.
Absolutely. And it sounds like there's some positive developments, and we're looking forward to seeing and sharing more details as that develops and things go on, and hopefully.
But you're right. I am, and I'll be very happy for this to be on my end, for it to be over either way.
I imagine even if it doesn't go, like, even if it's like, I mean, it's like you said, we won't be able to say that we didn't do anything, right? Like, even if it doesn't go the way we wanted to, we can be like, okay, we can at least put our hands off.
I'll have what I'm personally getting out of this, even in a worst case scenario, is like I'll have no regrets on it. Like I won't have like a nagging doubt at all.
Yeah,
it's like, well, I did everything,
Yeah, clear conscience.
Okay, it's not possible. Now we know.
Yeah. Oh, there was a question I kind of missed. If you don't mind, is there any particular person who's been a real huge help to you in this that you want to give a shout out to, like a thanks?
Oh, it's many people, and a lot of them don't even want the attention. I mean, I mentioned the Snoops 4 guy in one of the video. In France, he's really been helping out a lot, but it's a lot of people. And sometimes it's been kind of a blur because I've been seeing screen names more, and I don't necessarily match them to the emails and the other names. So it's definitely a collective effort.
Well, excellent. Well, that's kind of, many hands make light labor. So it's good to have hear that so many people are helping out.
Not really, but at the same time, it's making stuff possible that wouldn't be. That's more what it's doing.
I guess it's improvement. Going from impossible to difficult is still an improvement, right? Like,
I think I don't know. I can't know how close we are without knowing what's really going on in internal government politics. But look, I'd say the chances are very high on almost all fronts. We're going to get conclusive answers. So that's what I'm aiming for. So.
Well, that's good. That's good that we have.
But we might win too, which would be very, very nice.
Yeah, because you got to think if it wins in one place, like that's a huge win. If it wins in multiple places, it's like an absolute slam dunk.
It's over. Yeah.
Yeah.
It might even be over in one place. Like if France or Australia, just again, we have refunds on Steam now. That was just one country, So
yeah, absolutely.
I think it's the same dynamic. All right, I'm gonna go, man.
All right, thank you.
Good talking to you. Interesting that you're from.
Whoop. Editing room boom here. Yeah, we started talking about our hometown here, so I have to skip through this. We chatted about a few more things and about how bad the housing market is, which is a pretty depressing note to end on, so I'm gonna skip over all of that too. Trust me, you're not missing much. Well.
All right, I'll see you, man.
Thanks for chatting. Take it easy.
Sure.
Well, that's basically all she wrote. Thanks, Ross, for coming on and chatting. I think it's time for awards. I've thought long and hard about this, and I think I have to go with Boom talks too much. Yeah, for somebody who's supposed to be interviewing someone else, I got nervous and ran out of questions and talked a little too long. But hey, Ross was a trooper and was really, really patient, so I can't appreciate that enough. As for you watching, thank you for checking this video out and sticking through it to the end. Next up, we'll be taking a little lakeside trip to a lake that's not a lake.
Baby, shake me,